Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome, everyone. Today I want to go over a concept that I've sort of always felt intuitively but never really put numbers to. So I had my research department pull an all-nighter for this one. And that's the idea that as you get to the very top of greatness, like the players who are really close to being all-time greats or GOATs, card values go up exponentially and like extreme exponentially, not just like a little bit exponentially, but extreme. And it's important to sort of understand this, especially if long-term value is really important to you. And you'll see that as you just drop down a rung or two off the GOAT scale, card values really drop quick. And I have two examples to share here. We have a vintage baseball and a modern basketball that will sort of explain what I'm talking about. All right, first our vintage baseball example, and take a look at these three cards here and these three players. Roberto Clemente, Ernie Banks, and Luis Aparicio. All three of these players are Hall of Famers, so on some level they're an all-time great. And in each case, this is their one and only rookie card. 55 Topps Roberto Clemente, 54 Banks, 56 Luis Aparicio. Each of them has exactly one rookie card. This is it, all from the mid-50s. Roberto Clemente would be considered by most to be a top-tier Hall of Famer. Like when I think of post-war baseball Hall of Famers, I think of Mantle, Mays, Aaron, Jackie Robinson, Roberto Clemente, Sandy Koufax, maybe a couple others, but he's in that top tier. Ernie Banks, I would sort of say, is like in the next tier of Hall of Famers. Like he's not in that top tier, but he's just one notch down, along with players like, let's say, Yogi Berra and Bob Gibson, Carl Yastrzemski, and others. Luis Aparicio I'd sort of describe as in a third tier or like the lowest tier of Hall of Famers. Sure he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he's not on the level of Roberto Clemente or Ernie Banks. So I chose a PSA 5 for each of their rookie cards, and I chose PSA 5 because it's sort of the highest grade that isn't impacted by pop reports in any way. Here are the pop counts just in case you want to see. You can see they're all sort of in the same ballpark of pop counts in a PSA 5. There's actually been more Clementes graded than either of the other two, but that's because it's the most valuable of the three cards. But they're all pretty close. I don't think pop count impacts the values here, at least in terms of compared to each other. All right, stay with me here as we're going to do a little bit of math. I promise not too much, but here's each player's career WAR, wins above replacement. Roberto Clemente got to 95, Ernie Banks 68, Luis Aparicio 56. And for those who don't know, WAR is basically a number that tries to summarize a player's value in one number. The higher the better. It's not exactly that, but that's sort of what it's doing. And if Luis Aparicio's WAR was 56 and Ernie Banks's was 68, well, Ernie Banks's was 21% higher, a multiplier of 1.21. So Ernie Banks, you could say Ernie Banks's career was 21% more impressive than Luis Aparicio's career. Same with Clemente, he's at 95, that's a multiplier of 1.7 over Aparicio. So you could say that Roberto Clemente's career was 70% more impressive than Luis Aparicio's. Trust me, that's not a perfect way to do it, but for the purpose of the study, it roughly makes sense. All right, so we're going to use the Aparicio as our baseline, and the value of the card in a PSA 5 is roughly $165. Here's a bunch of recent sales of the card in a PSA 5. So if we only knew the value of the Aparicio and we knew all three players' WAR, you would expect the values to look like this here. The Aparicio is 165, we know that. The Banks should be about 21% higher, that should be about 200. And the Clemente would be 70% higher, making it about $280. So this is what would sort of be expected if there was no exponential growth at the top of the all-time great chart. Okay, but what are the actual values of the card? Well, first I have to adjust the scale here so that I can get it to fit on the chart. You can see the expected blue line. It's pretty flat. Now it's still a slight upwards trend, but it appears pretty flat anyway. But when we add in the actual values, look at this. They're not even close to the expected values of the blue line here. The Banks is basically 9 times more valuable than you would expect it to be in relation to the Aparicio, and the Clemente is almost 15 to 20 times more valuable than you would expect it to be in relation to the Aparicio. There you can see there's an exponential growth as we go up the all-time great list. Again, Roberto Clemente's WAR is basically 1.7 times that of Luis Aparicio, but the value of his rookie card, which is comparable in all categories and specs, is 26 times the value of the Luis Aparicio. Again, just a massive run-up as we get into the top-tier players. So yeah, that's the vintage baseball example. You can see the values of the cards here at the bottom. Again, all three cards, very, very similar specs. And, I sort of thought, Luis Aparicio, Hall of Famer, 70-year-old card, PSA 5 rookie, $165. That seemed like a a good value buy for a collector. But anyway, that's for a different video. All right, now for our modern basketball example, and for that we're going to use these three cards here and these three players here: LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. All three have rookie cards from 2003. All three have many rookie cards that year. So we're going to use their Topps Chrome refractor for each of them. None of these cards are sort of short printed versus the other. They're all printed the exact same amount in theory. All three, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh are already in the Hall of Fame as we speak now. LeBron James obviously will get into the Hall of Fame at some point after he retires. Now, LeBron James would, clearly be considered top tier player, top 5 player of all time. Many people argue he's number 1. Dwayne Wade, I would sort of call in that second tier of Hall of Famer. He's not a top tier player, but he's a solid, one step down, all time great player. And then Chris Bosh, I would sort of categorize as, tier 3, or again, sort of a low end Hall of Famer, deservedly of being in the Hall of Fame, but sort of in the low end Hall of Fame category. Basketball has a stat called win share, which is very similar to war. Basically just means how many wins were you worth to your team over the course of your career. And so, it's loosely trying to summarize a player's overall value in one number. LeBron James currently sits at 264 career win share. He's still active, but that's at the time of recording this video. Dwayne Wade retired with 121 and Chris Bosh with 106. If we look at the multipliers, one way to read this is Dwayne Wade's, career was 14% more impressive than Chris Bosh's. And LeBron James's career is basically 2.5 times more impressive than Chris Bosh's. Again, I'm not making that argument. That's just a reasonable way to loosely, read these numbers. All right, so we're going to do the same exercise that we did with the baseball. We're going to use Chris Bosh as our baseline. The PSA 10 copy of his Topps Chrome Refractor rookie sells for about $215. So again, if we only knew the value of the Bosh and each player's career win share, you would expect the card values to look like this. We know the Bosh is 215. Dwayne Wade's win share is about 14% higher than Bosh, so that would make his rookie card 14% more valuable, $245. And the LeBron James is about 2.5 times more win share than Bosh, so you would expect the card value to be about 2.5 times, which would make it about $535. But of course, to fit the actual prices, we have to massively adjust the scale again. And I mean, just look at these numbers. Dwayne Wade, you might expect it at $245, is actually worth $1,300. And LeBron James, which you might expect at $535, is actually worth $26,000, basically 50 times what it seems like it should be worth in relation to the Bosh. Again, just a massive exponential curve towards the high end, top tier players. Again, LeBron James's career is roughly 2.5 times more impressive than Chris Bosh, yet his equivalent rookie is 120 times the value of the Bosh. What's funny is the Chris Bosh is actually a pop 480. So that means 4 copies of the LeBron are worth more than every copy of the Chris Bosh on the planet combined. But that's it for the basketball example. I mean, you could read this that the LeBron James is way overpriced. You could read this that the Chris Bosh is way underpriced. Or maybe this is just exactly right. This is just what collectors value these cards and these players at this moment in time. But really appreciate everyone watching. Hope you enjoyed. Would love to hear people's thoughts on any of this. And see you again next time. Thanks, everyone.